Hello and welcome to Comic Talk. My name is Brad and I'll be your host. For today's issue, we'll be taking a look at Superman Comics issue number 24, and it's part 5 of the Black Dawn saga. Taking just a quick look at the cover, as you can see, it's a wonderful cover, but as usual, what you see on the cover is not what's happening on the inside of the comic. Like I've said before, comic books, clickbaiting since comic books. So we start this issue off by having a little peek at what Manchester Black has been up to since the last time we saw him. Manchester Black has been off-world, doing his Manchester Black thing, being all large and in charge and stuff like that. And it seems like what he's doing to Superboy right now, he actually does quite often. He actually did it to Mr. Cobb and his daughter previously on a different planet. I think Mr. Cobb feels indebted to him and has been following him, even though he kind of questions his ways. You'll find out sooner or later what I mean with the rest of this discussion. Now, the next scene takes us to the hospital, presumably in Hamilton County, where Lois has been admitted into a hospital room, and Clark is kind of there at the bedside, and we just get an inkling where Clark is peeking out the door, and there's some of the nursing staff, some of the hospital staff, they're talking about there being various events, tremors and stuff like that happening in the town, but Clark has no idea. He can't hear it, he can't feel it, and he's Superman, and he can't sense this activity. I think this is actually the first inkling that we get that it's not just the Kents who have been mentally manipulated by Manchester Black, but it's more than likely the whole town who's not involved in this, which is probably like 99.9% of the town has no idea. They're in the dark just the same as the Kents. Next, Lois awakes, and of course Clark is by the bedside, and he's feeling guilty, he's beating himself up, and Lois kind of wonders what's going on with John, and Clark's like, well, I brought you here first because you were injured, and he's going to go off and he's going to find John. Meanwhile, Lois is trying to reassure Clark that he's going to get the job done, that he did everything he could, and Clark's starting to beat himself up, and Lois doesn't really want him to do that. After Lois's little pep talk to Clark, she's like, now get up, we need Superman. And Superman flies off to go and find John and figure out what's going on. After this, we're given a scene where Superman has flown back to Mr. Cobb's house to begin his investigation, and he's lifted up the house and he's having a peek underneath, and he can see that there's an entire underground network that connects, likely, to Dead Man's Swamp. After this, as he's just beginning to have a real peek at the underground network with his X-ray vision, he hears John call his name. He turns around and he sees John, and John begins to question him on why his dad, Superman, didn't do anything, didn't stop what was happening, because John had to watch Lois have her leg chopped off. This reunion is short-lived when Superman realizes that it's not only John there, but it's Manchester Black as well. That's right, turning around, Superman sees that he's facing none other than Manchester Black. His smug, stupid face that he always has, looking all cocky and stuff. Superman immediately fires at him with his heat vision, but Manchester Black has a protection bubble around him because of the telekinesis and all. And Manchester Black, what a cocky guy, he lets in just enough heat vision to light his cigarette. What a nice guy. Manchester Black takes a quick drag of his cigarette and then mentally blasts Superman back, just flicks him back as if he were nothing. At that point, Manchester, John, and Superman end up at the tree that was burning a few issues back, except for the tree's still burning, and John questions him on this. At this point, we get a little bit of a hint as to what's going on in the town and with John and Lois and Superman's perception of everything that's happening. Manchester calls the burning tree a telepath's visual aid. Manchester begins assaulting Superman with his mental abilities, and Superman, as we've seen before, has a really difficult time dealing with Manchester because he could kill Manchester just like that, and he won't. Which is good, because that's one of the things that makes him Superman. Instead, he calls Krypto to come and chew on his arm. Yeah. Superman quickly and cleverly uses the assault of Krypto chomping down on his arm to begin a frontal attack on Manchester Black. He is so mad. He's like, I could kill you. But of course, he won't. Manchester doesn't believe him, makes fun of him, and begins to expound on his plan that really Superman is old news and that John is really going to be the one that he prims to become the real Superman, the new Superman of this world. And until then, he's basically just going to let Superman and the rest of the world go back to believing whatever it was they believed before about Superman. Now, I don't want to spoil everything because there's a whole lot of story in this, and I really want you to actually read the comic. But during the whole explanation between Manchester and Superman, because you know how supervillains like to talk and tell you their plans and stuff like that. While that's happening, Mr. Cobb comes along and he's had enough of Manchester. He kind of realizes that Manchester isn't such a nice guy. And yeah, he saved him before, but he's still a bit of a douche. A lot of a douche. A big douche. So yeah, Mr. Cobb comes to the aid of John and Superman. He wants to protect John. Manchester Black doesn't really have a hard time at all dealing with an angry Mr. Cobb. He kind of brushes him off like he's nothing, and then his daughter gets pretty upset, and then she begins to attack him, and you know that Manchester would do the same thing to her, but while he's beginning to just deal with Mr. Cobb's daughter, Superman takes that time and releases Batman and Frankenstein and Robin and the whole crew of people that were in those glass dome things. I don't think they actually said what they were. So the very next thing we see is that Superman and Batman and Damian and Frankenstein and some other people have very quickly amassed together, assessed the situation, and they're about to take on Manchester Black and his goons when Manchester kind of turns things on their head a little bit by taking control of John and releasing to him, presumably releasing to him the rest of his powers, which we know he's been holding back in the first place. See, John probably should have been a super being for a long time, except for Manchester was holding the powers back and hiding in the shadows and playing the long game. Well, no more long game now, because now Superman is faced with the one thing that you know he doesn't want to have to face, and that's he has to fight his son. And you know Superman's not going to fight John. He won't lay a hand on John. He won't touch a hair on his head. This is a really neat twist, and I like the fact that Superman's been put into a really difficult situation, and if our heroes aren't put into difficult, dire, challenging situations, then the stories cease to be fun. And to me, this is an excellent story. I can't imagine having to fight one of my children. That'd be horrible. Superman being Superman, I'm sure he'll figure something out, but it means that it will be more than just fisticuffs with Manchester Black to start with. Things are probably going to get a whole lot worse before they get better. I'm assuming that Superman's going to take a super beating from Super John. Just saying. Now, I just want to take this time to add in my opinion about the idea of Lois missing her leg. I think that she's not missing a leg. I think it's just that, an idea. I think that Manchester Black has implanted the idea in Clark's head, Lois's head, and John's head, and they saw what Manchester wanted them to see, but she actually still has her leg. And I think that for a few reasons. The number one reason is actually the Action Comics that I read 2 weeks ago, where this whole story that takes place in Action Comics, as a matter of fact, takes place after the events of what's happening currently in Superman comics. And Lois has her leg in those stories. So I'm going to say that she has her leg just for that. There's got to be something else going on. But then in this comic, we also find out that Manchester Black uses, like I mentioned before, these visual aids. And so as in you have the tree that's burning but not burning. I mean, I'm sure that's probably an allusion as well to the burning bush and Moses, and he feels like he's the savior and stuff like that. But the fact is, I'm betting the tree's not on fire. Also, we saw the skeleton dog pop up out of the ground. Probably wasn't there. And then the people in the town are reporting seismic activity and stuff like that, but Superman has no idea. And he's Superman, and he should be able to feel it and hear it. And so I think that the only people that think Lois is missing her leg are Lois, Clark, and John for that reason. And with that, I think I'm done. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking the time to do so. It means a lot to me. If you've enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up. That way I know you liked it. If you think you'd like to see more of this kind of content, I do comic talk. I also do unboxings. I do short vlogs with my wife. If you'd like to see more of that, then please click the subscribe button and you'll get more of what we do in your inbox. Also, don't be afraid to leave a comment down below because I like hearing from everybody. Honestly. I know a lot of people say that, but I really do read every single comment and I try to reply when I can. Anywho, like I said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Toodaloo!